Feels good. All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Got to be bad, got to be bold, got to be brave. The ultimate fear buster. All of us, I think, most of us anyways, know the story of the prodigal son. That's where there's we'll just say the mother, father, God presence. And they have two children. One stays at home and the other one goes off. And the prodigal son sort of asks for his money, all his inheritance from the mother, father, God, and leaves. I've heard, and then eventually he spends it, has wonderful time, pleasure, until he lands on his face in a pigsty, jealous of the pig, and decides, I think I'm going to go home now. And he goes home, and the big story is he's welcomed back. He was ready to go back and be a servant, do what it takes to ingratiate himself back into the family, and instead he's greeted as if he's never done anything wrong, and you are totally loved. I've heard this story many times, as I think most of you have, sometimes mostly from the prodigal son perspective, sometimes from the other son's perspective, which is, why I'm here, hello, love me too, a little jealousy and envy. I heard just a couple weeks ago, and I loved it. The person speaking was saying, well, I was wondering, what was the father thinking the whole time? I never really thought about it from the father's perspective. And he said, the father just loved. He didn't ever, and then he didn't take it much further, but I was thinking about that. The father was just stayed in a constant state of love. He never wavered. What he did not do was he didn't try to tell the son who was at home, look, I love you. Like, he wasn't trying to convince him. He was just present as love. When the prodigal son goes off, he never tried to stop him. He didn't send out forces like, no, you don't know what you're doing. He didn't try to convince him or manipulate him or force him or in any way try to control his behavior. And then when the prodigal son falls on his face in the pigsty, he doesn't go and try to pick him up. I never really thought about that. He never went to go try to help. Here, come on, let me help you. Had he done that, the prodigal son might have just said, no, no, no. It had to be from his choice. The prodigal son had to choose to come back. That the greatest gift that this divine presence and power was giving to both sons was free will. That the son who stayed didn't have to stay in order to earn the God's love. That's not why he should have been there. He should have been there to know he already had the love and to delight in it already. The prodigal son, he didn't go and try to convince him, look, why are you going to make your life so hard? Everything you want is right here. He didn't try to save him when he fell to his feet. That had to be a decision that the prodigal son made. And we say, well, he didn't have to earn his way back. He did not have to earn his way back into God's love, but he did have to make the journey back. And that's why we're all on this spiritual journey. Because we might have gone really far away from our heart, from that deep connection in our heart. So it's a journey to get back into our heart and to let all those layers of walls of separation, of otherness to dissolve, to get back into the depths of our heart. We have to do that. The divine presence is there, but it won't do it for us. We have to do it. We have to make that choice. And I love this idea of free will because the talk title today is The Ultimate Fear Buster. Now, this title comes from Home Office. So I'm looking through the notes that they suggested for today, and there's no point about what they say the ultimate fear buster is. And I'm like, am I supposed to know what the ultimate fear buster is? So I kind of went on a little journey this week, and I want you to go on it with me. I asked Jack about what his ultimate fear buster was, and it was amazing to me as he talked it out. He almost went on the exact same journey as me. So your journey might be different, or it might be the same, but the purpose of the idea of free will is that we all have a free will, that there is no the ultimate fear buster that is true for everybody, that we all get to individually decide and choose what that is for us. And if we want to have an ultimate fear buster. And so I'll share a little bit about the journey. So the first place I went is, and I asked you that question as I looked at my life, is when have I not felt fear? When was I in a place of fearlessness? And so I was looking back, and so you can just check in with yourself. When in your life have you not felt fear? And Jack and I had similar answers to it. But as I thought about my own time when I didn't feel fear, which was when I was with my family, when I was a child, I felt no fear. I felt completely safe. I found the world terrifying. I grew up learning history, watching the news. It was all really bad. So my education about what the world was like out there was like, this was a scary place. You can't trust people. Even across the screens, religious leaders who did bad things, east and west. There's nobody to trust. I also tended to be very gullible. So I never knew when people were joking with me, so then people sort of laugh at me. Even in college, when I was a freshman in college, I remember we were a bunch of us in my room, and someone said, oh, gullible's not in the dictionary. And yes, I got out the dictionary, looked up gullible, and showing them the word gullible, and everyone is laughing hysterically at me. So I had instant humility, which is I could not tell when people were joking or when they were serious so I automatically didn't trust people because I didn't know if what they were saying was true. So I had fear of the world. I didn't trust people, but I trusted my family. So that was my first place where I felt fearless, was when I was with my family. And yet, as I got older, the family kind of fell up. I have 3 older brothers. They all started going off to college, so my stability was leaving. And when I went off to college, my parents separated. And so that anchor left. And that happens with a lot of people. I was even a little afraid of saying people because I know there's people like, well, I don't really have a person that I hold on to for safety. And I think that's unfortunately an epidemic in our world today is loneliness. So if a person or people is your place of where you don't feel fear, then we become very dependent on that person. And when it goes away, then we're in fear. And that's what happened with me. I was in a lot of fear as my family my anchor started breaking away. I was faced with this world that terrified me, that felt very frightening, and I didn't understand. I couldn't understand what motivated people, why they did the things they did. And so I felt very insecure how to act. Went to therapy. That was helpful to look at my own inner darkness, etc. The more I started facing my own fears inside, it helped me deal with the external fears. But it really wasn't until I found New Thought that started to dissolve. And I'm guessing that most of you sort of have that same, not all of you because you're new to New Thought, but for those of us who are on the journey. And so the basic principle of New Thought is there's only one power, one presence. So that means that behind all these world of appearances, behind all of it, there's this incredible life. It's a spiritual life. You can't see it. You can see the impact of it, but you can't see it. And it's pure, unlimited love. There's no borders. There's no walls. There's no otherness. It accepts and loves all beings. It's unconditional love. It's in, through, and as all creation, but is greater than all creation. And so as someone who was always exploring, this was a wonderful thing to find, that there wasn't other. I was raised in a Christian home, but I was always interested in Buddhism or Hinduism. There wasn't other. There wasn't other cultures. We were all in this together. There was no place, there was no borders. That was an incredible thing to find. And then it went even deeper in it because you still had life, which struggled, so I went even deeper into oneness. And what I did in, what year is this, 1992, I did 30 days of silence. In that 30 days, I wasn't in school, I wasn't working, I wasn't talking to friends, I wasn't talking to family. It was complete solitude in 30 days of just being with God, the divine presence. I wanted to really hear what it was saying. And at the same time, I was reading Joel Goldsmith's, who is also he's a New Thought mystic, and he really hammers home this idea of oneness. He's just like, he said, people say they believe in oneness, but you're constantly saying this is bad, this is good, this is the right and the wrong and the good and the bad. But there's not behind that, there's only good where there is no opposite. There's only love where there's no opposite. That the ultimate, not in our world, but in the ultimate, there's this praise that's just pure love, pure light, pure peace. And so I'm reading this over and over as I'm in the silence, and it's getting deeper and deeper, and the layers are falling away. And I felt this extraordinary, the peace that passes all human understanding. And so when I came out of that 30 days, I wasn't clear what work to do yet, what I was being called to do, but I was absolutely anchored in oneness. And so I went to Cleveland first to visit, and my mom is a huge extrovert, so she knows everybody. And I'm just sort of trying to feel out what my work is to do. So she's setting up all these appointments, and I'm going to them. I was a total introvert, shy person, terrified of the world, and I just suddenly noticed I'm going to all these, and I feel no fear. And that was the second time in my life that I realized all fear was gone. That I had gotten so anchored in oneness that I no longer felt the world out there was separate from the world in here, that there's only one power, one presence. It is always good. And if I stayed anchored in that, everything was working for my good. I was only operating from oneness of love. I was only going to meet love. I was only going to see love. I was only going to taste love. And I was so clear about that because it wasn't just a concept. I just spent 30 days anchored in that awareness that everything flowed, and I just was shocked. In fact, I remember the point where I was just standing in her kitchen, and I was like aware, not only did I feel fear, but how much fear I'd been feeling up until then. I hadn't even been aware of how much fear I was walking around in. But nothing really clicked there. I went to the D.C. area, and that's where this idea of working in a psychiatric hospital came from a friend. My first impulse was to constrict. Why would you think I would be good at a psychiatric hospital? Well, I was a psychology major, but didn't think about that. But then my dad's neighbor had just gotten out of a psychiatric hospital, spent 3 weeks there, and was glowing. She was like the best. It was like she went on vacation. She was just like, it was so healing and transfer, and it was only 7 minutes away. And I remember the other neighbor said, oh no, they're having they're laying off nurses left and right in the D.C. area. And I had seen that on the news too, but I just said, no, I'm here for one power, one presence. I'm here to serve. I wasn't sure this was the job for me, so it did scare me. Fear was becoming back. Got hired almost immediately. Did not help my fear quotient that before I was allowed to start working, I had to do a several-day training on how to restrain assaultive and aggressive behavior. I was like, So I sat in the training, and I had to disassociate a little. Well, I don't really need this job if I don't. I always had my one foot out the door because it just was so overwhelming. Then I got the job, did the training, and then I remember just going, for the first 3 weeks, it was so intense for me, and I was in so much terror, so the fear came back. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I still remember looking in the mirror, trying to put on, have you ever tried to put on mascara and cry at the same time? It was like, and it was just, fear was coming up. I was so overwhelmed, but I kept moving forward. I kept doing it. And ultimately, as most of you know, I ended up loving the job and couldn't believe I was getting paid to talk not only with people about the surface, but when people are in the hospital, all the layers are, the masks are taken off, and you get to be with people in their naked soul. And to me, that was just the most extraordinary blessing. And I felt so privileged and honored, and I loved it. I didn't love people suffering, but I loved that I was able to be in service. But I found I couldn't be, I had to learn, and I've talked about this before, that I was seeing the oneness, the wholeness, and the perfection in each person with whom I came in contact, but also had to see their humanity, because it wasn't very helpful if I couldn't also go back to the meeting and saying this is how they're doing humanly. And so this is where I learned simultaneous awareness. So there's one. So the way Shunryu Suzuki puts it is there's oneness on one side, but he said you always know there's a flip side. On the other side of the coin is duality, and that we all experience both. To say there's only oneness in someone who's in a lot of pain or there's a lot of suffering, that almost feels cruel. Like, no, we're still having a human experience. There's still very challenging, painful things that hurt, and we need to take care of those, and we need to acknowledge both. So I'm being with all of this week because my answer, and I'm wondering if some of you had the same answer when it said the ultimate fear buster. All week long, I'm saying, well, oneness is the ultimate fear buster. Oneness. But as I was being with it, I was looking at readings. I sent Christina, I was looking at readings about oneness, and I was just going to go oneness, but I'm like, yeah, but. Even looking at what's happening in our world today, it didn't seem like that wasn't the ultimate fear buster, because I still had fear. I still have fear. And I don't know too many, there's probably very few human beings who don't have fear. So oneness didn't get rid of the fear. So oneness was not the ultimate fear buster for me. Again, this is my own answer. And then I came upon this reading by Christian D. Larson in The Pathway of Roses about purpose. And as soon as I read it, I'm like, that's it. That's the ultimate fear buster. Because purpose doesn't demand me to feel anything, but it's a commitment to something greater than myself. It's something that no matter what's happening, good or bad, no matter what's happening internally, no matter what's happening externally, I can choose, I have free will to choose why I'm alive, why I'm on this planet, why I choose to get out of bed, why I choose to show up. That is a choice. And the thing with purpose, a lot of times when we think of purpose, we think of it as a job, a career, a talent, a skill. But it's not any of those things. Those talents, the skills, the jobs are there to serve your purpose. The purpose is an idea. If you hear the reading today, sometimes you only hear it once, but I got to read it a couple times. Our purpose is a divine idea or an ideal. We know about the causal realm. There's no form. You don't see your purpose. Your purpose isn't something that you can physically see. It's an idea of why you are alive. And if we get in touch, our heart is our power point. Our heart is when we connect with our heart, our purpose for being on this planet, and we choose it. It's always there. That purpose, that idea, whatever that is, it's always there, but we have to choose it. We have to consciously say, this is why I'm alive. This is why I am willing to get up even when it's hard, even when I'm sad, even when it's challenging or overwhelming. This is why I get up when it's good. Good or bad, it doesn't matter. This is why I get up in the morning. That's a choice that we're making every day. That's a place of incredible power, and that's also an incredible place of freedom. That the world is not defining how I experience it. The world is not defining how I get to walk through it. So as I was going through just looking at the hospital, even though the fear started coming up, I kept moving forward. I kept saying yes, because the choice that I had made, which has set me free, is I am here to serve God, period. That's the only reason why I'm on this planet, is to serve God. Everything that I do, my relationships with my family, this community, being a citizen of the world, no matter what it is, it's to be in service to God. And once I made that decision, and I made it, nobody made it for me, nobody told me to make it. I don't mean just a spiritual teacher, but there wasn't like some angel out of the sky saying, this is your purpose. It had to come from me. But once I made it, there's such a power in that. This is why I am here. I have gone through very difficult times and good times. It didn't matter. It didn't change why I'm here. We keep holding on to, and that's the place of freedom, and to me, that's the ultimate fear buster, because no matter what's happening in the world, I'm never so afraid that I don't show up, because I know my purpose, right? We show up. We know our purpose. I think of Shunro Suzuki was saying about a samurai. Samurai had to be willing to not be afraid of death, had to face death and not be afraid of it. And it was only when he lost the fear of death that he could actually fully realize his potential. And he was pointing out that that's actually true of all of us in our life. When we stop fearing things, what can limit us, our own death even, then we can actually fulfill our highest potential, because fear is no longer making our decisions for us. I remember I had an acting teacher once who said, some people tiptoe all the way through life so they arrive at death safely. I thought that was really good. Tiptoe through life so we arrive at death safely. That's not how we want to live. So this is all very interesting as we look at our worldly conditions, Russian invading Ukraine. I have found that pretty intense to see tanks rolling and someone going in to feel like they have the right to conquer another land. And growing up in the world news, history, we visit battlefields all the time. I'm very aware of the violence that is behind it. I'm very aware that I have an 18-year-old son. It's sometimes I think you can't help but see some connection with World War II, Hitler, Mussolini, that there's multiple places where this energy is coming up? What is our response going to be? I've been amazed and just so thrilled to see how the good part of social media, at least in my social media lines, pray, 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 pray. Like there's this collective prayer going on that couldn't have happened before without social media, because we're all connecting all over the country and the world. Pray, 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 pray. There's a vortex of prayer that is happening, which is, I think, extraordinarily powerful, and it's never happened before in the way that it is now, because we see each other praying. And we don't know. We don't know how it's going to play out. I am absolutely holding and standing in the power of prayer, and that through our prayer, things will shift in this incredible heated divisiveness that we're feeling in the world, in our country, and it seems like about everything. It's so heated and strong that starts to soothe and starts to harmonize and lessen. But there is the fear that's still really high about everything, climate change, COVID. Just fear is pretty intensely around us, and sadness and grief about what we're seeing happening in the world. And so we have to look for our heroes, or at least I do. I look for my heroes. And I'm grateful. We were talking a couple weeks ago, and Gloria mentioned Eddie Hillisman. And I haven't talked about her in a while. When I first started our center, I used to talk about her because she was one of my heroes. And so I want to share about her because she's an extraordinary woman. She's 13 years older. She lived in World War II in Amsterdam. She was a law student. She was learning Slavic languages. She was in her 20s. She started doing a lot of interior work. She started working with a Jungian therapist, going deep into her soul, because there was she felt very chaotic inwardly. She was very alive, extroverted, outside the box, but felt a lot of pain inside. And working with a Jungian therapist, really started doing some deep inner work. As World War II is happening, she's Jewish. She chose to be part of because of her gift of languages and the people that she could be the liaison between the Germans and the Jewish people. And because of her connections, she was given several opportunities to hide, to leave. And she said that was important to her. How could I let my Jewish sisters and brothers die while I go take care of my own self? So she chose to stay in the concentration camps. The Westerbroek was in the one in Amsterdam. And so she wrote these journals. And the journals begin before she even goes into the camps, and then her times in the camp. And then in 1943, she gets transferred to, and her parents and one of her brothers get transferred to Auschwitz. And because she's done so much inner work, she's constantly doing this inner work, inwardly and outwardly, as she's facing it. And she says some extraordinary things. And so because she's a writer, I just rather use her words than my own. Well, I should have really written this down. My battles are, so people are saying, why did she go back? And she said, it's not my personality I'm not here to fight the Nazis. I'm here to walk with my fellow brothers and sisters. My battles are fought out inside with my own demons. It is not my nature to tilt against the savage, cold-blooded fanatics who clamor for our destruction. I am not afraid of them either. I don't know why. I am so calm, it is sometimes as if I were standing on the parapet of the palace of history, looking down over far distant land. This bit of history we are experiencing right now is something I know I can stand up to. I know what is happening, and yet my head is clear. But sometimes I feel as if a layer of ashes were being sprinkled over my heart, as if my face were withering and decaying before my very eyes, and as if everything were falling apart in front of me and my heart were letting everything go. But these are brief moments. Then everything falls back into place. My head is clear again, and I can once more bear and stand up to this piece of history which is ours. For once you have begun to walk with God, you need only to keep on walking with him, and all of life becomes one long stroll. Such a marvelous feeling. We lack an historical sense, forget that even those about to perish are a part of history. I hate nobody. I am not embittered. And once the love of humankind has germinated in you, it will grow without measure. She lived this. And I repeat with the same old passion, although I am gradually beginning to think I am being tiresome. It is the only thing we can do, Klaus. I see no alternative. Each of us must turn inwards and destroy in ourselves all that we think we ought to destroy in others. And remember that every atom of hate we add to this world makes it still more inhospitable. She was extraordinary. She said, I want to be the thing. So many of the women in her barracks, overcrowded barracks in Auschwitz would say they wanted to just stop thinking and feeling all the time. They just wanted to go numb. And to her, going numb was the end, not what she wanted. So she said, let me be the thinking heart for this entire barracks. Let me be the thinking heart of this concentration camp. And her passion was to be fully present. And she was with people's pain. She was so tender, so compassionate, so empathetic. But then it would get overwhelming, and she would detach herself and do all wrestling within her. It was, I think, one reason why she's never sort of had the fame. First of all, her diaries didn't even get published until decades after, until the early 80s. And the reason why I don't think it's ever really fully taken off is because she's a little bit more complex. She's only 13 years. She died in Auschwitz in November of 1943. And she was 29 years old, only 13 years older than Anne Frank. But she's more complex. She's really going deep into the darkness within her. Carl Jung says we can only go high as we go low. It's a complex and challenging world that we're in. So when we say the ultimate fear buster, this is not some simplistic, light, Pollyannish thing, but this is something that can hold the depths of our darkness, the depths of the darkness in the world, the complexity, because that's what she was always looking at, was the complexity. No one's all bad, no one's all good. That allows us to go to the heights, and she would walk along the fence of her concentration camp, and she said, I feel complete and utter joy. I feel like I'm in paradise right here. And you know that she's not just saying those words. She has found something in her that transcends her circumstances. Here's someone who's in Auschwitz who is watching people die regularly, and she finds paradise because she has found the kingdom of heaven within her, because she is so deeply committed to her purpose, to why she's here, the ideals of her, which is freedom. Freedom no matter what, that when we discover in divine, we're here because we love God, we love this divine presence, and when we love that with our whole heart, body, and mind, we discover a freedom and a light and a joy that nothing of this world could ever give or take away. It can't give it, nor can it take away. We choose every moment. Our ultimate fear buster is to know why we are on this planet and to choose that reason day in and day out, no matter what the circumstances of conditions that we are coming across, and that's where our power is, that's where our freedom is, and that's where our joy is. I have a friend who grew up in, I grew up with her, and she lives in Chicago now, and she's black. She's 4 black sons, and I love every time she they're incredible artists and doing amazing things, and every time she posts things, black joy is a revolution. I love that. That's her idea. That's the idea. That's her purpose. Black joy is a revolution, and you feel it, and you see it, and you see the amazing things she's doing to bring healing wherever she goes. What is your ultimate fear buster? What is your purpose? What is that idea that if someone met you, they would know who you are and what you're about? They would know that idea. Like I haven't seen her in years, but I know what her purpose is because she shines it. She lets the whole world know. What is that purpose for you? What is your purpose to being on this planet? Not just to make money, not just to fulfill. We have to pay bills. We have to do all the normal human things. But what is it that transcends? What is that idea that is greater than everything that you are utterly and completely committed to? Heart, body, mind, and soul. When we know that, we're free. And we're free of fear, ultimately. So let's pray. Let's feel into that wonderful power in the presence of pure spirit, Mother, Father, God, infinite love, intelligence of this universe. We just breathe into your presence and your power in our heart, in our body, in our mind, in our soul, to our right, to our left, in front of us, behind us, above us, below us. There is no place where this divine presence and this power is not. This power and this presence is right here in the Bay Area. This power and this presence is right here in this country. This power and this presence is right here in, through, and as this entire planet and all of its life forms. This power and this presence is in the cosmos beyond anything we could ever humanly imagine, in the galaxies upon galaxies upon galaxies. This infinite oceanic love beyond what we could ever humanly put a label on, before we could ever hold on to. And yet we know that it's so true and alive, that it is more real to us than the chairs upon which we sit. That love, that light, that joy that never changes, that never shifts. It's at the center of our being. It's at the center of our heart right here and right now. We breathe into it again. We feel that love. We accept that love. We choose that love. We choose that love. We choose this presence that is greater than we could ever be humanly. We choose that which is our divine destiny, our divine inheritance. We choose our divine inheritance right here and right now, no matter what's happening in our life. Nothing has to change in our life. Nothing needs to be fixed in our life. We don't need to make anything happen in our life to make this choice. Nothing needs to happen to shift or change in the external world and the world around us for us to make this choice. We have the power, we have the free will to make this choice right here and right now. And with that choice and with our total and complete commitment to that choice, everything shifts and changes. And we become a beautiful blessing wherever we are. We are becoming greater and greater vehicles of light and love. We become a place of healing for ourselves and for others. A place of light for ourselves and for others. A place of love for ourselves and others. A place of joy for ourselves and others. A place of utter freedom. This delightful, unlimited freedom. That is who we are. This is who we are. And so I celebrate that now. I surround and enfold all those who are feeling the pain and the suffering of separation in this moment, that this divine love is even now being activated in the hearts and the minds of the souls of those who need this love more than ever before on this beautiful day. We see the face of God in every person, in every being. We are unwavering. We don't turn away. We walk into it with our purpose guiding us every step of the way. We are fearless. We say yes. No matter what, we say yes. We say yes. And this is how we are, and we become heaven on earth, here and now. In deep abiding gratitude for this time of prayer, for the souls and the consciousness that are activating this prayer even now in our own individual lives, and in divine peace and everlasting joy, we let this word be now. And we say together, and so it is. Amen and amen.